and welcome to the first episode of the Healer Roundtable discussions. We're starting with a very big, prominent topic within our industry, and that is burnout. I don't think I know any practitioner amongst all the practitioners that I know worldwide that hasn't experienced some form of burnout somewhere along the path. So a great topic to have. We're going to be joined by my co-host Debjit, all the way in India. He's one of our new committee members. We're going to be joined by two fabulous practitioners. We're joined once again by Leonie Maritz. You'll recognize her from one of our other series from last month. She is a traditional astrologist. She's a tarot reader, a coach with a background in psychology and English. And she's going to be bringing quite a lot of her personal experience around burnout to the topic. And we're then joined by Adrienne Carci up here in the upstate of South Carolina, where I am. So Adrienne Carci is a mindfulness facilitator and energy worker who brings creativity, joy, and a strong sense of community to her work. She also offers individual and family healing sessions and music-based meditations. Speakers, thank you so much for joining this very, very relevant and big topic for our industry. I'm really, really excited to get into today's topic. So let's get into chatting about how do you personally define burnout for yourself? What is burnout for you? Adrienne, I'm going to start with you. I'll let you kick off the topic there.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I do agree that this it's a great first conversation because it's so important. For me personally, burnout is kind of a sense of overwhelm, right? And I try to look at everything as sense of balance or imbalance, right? And so burnout is as soon as these sensations and feelings start to feel imbalanced. And for me, that looks like just overwhelm and manifests as kind of irritation towards anything, towards anything not in my plan or not, yeah. So for me, and for everybody, it can kind of be explained as just an exacerbation of whatever stress responses you have, right? When those small stress responses go from okay to like bigger and bigger, and then can eventually become like debilitating. It can eventually impact daily life and the things we need to handle. So
Yes.
I think debilitating is a great word to use there, because I mean, I know in the numerous burnouts that I've had. I mean, I haven't had just one or two. I've had plenty in the 25 years that I've been doing this. And debilitating is absolutely the right word to be using. You know, there's days and weeks where you are just flat on your back and you can't do anything else. Like day-to-day functioning is difficult. So I love the use of that word. Leonie, do you wanna jump in and chat about what does burnout mean for you? How do you define burnout?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, the term that I've given it is empty cup syndrome, where you've just given everything and your cup is empty and it just feels like there isn't anything more to give. And yet somehow you keep trying to give, and then it becomes, as Adrienne said, like this frustrating experience. In my personal experience, I've experienced things like fatigue, headaches, a weariness towards the work, which is one of my biggest red flags for myself, because I love my work. I'm passionate about the work that I do. I'm passionate about working with people. So when I feel that kind of, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, I actually can't face this right now, then I know that burnout is a thing and that is happening. I also notice physical symptoms, so the fatigue, the headaches, trouble sleeping, anxiety, things like that. My body really starts to give me signs that I need rest. And it's not just sleeping, it's a different kind of rest. You need to sort of add more spiritual nutrition for yourself in those times, work on your boundaries, things like that. So that's how I experience it. And I think it's quite a subversive thing. We don't realize it's happening because the nature of our work is to give and to invest and to engage and to be present, so, and hold space. So we don't always realize that the cup is draining. So sometimes you have to be really conscious of yourself, of your interactions. But exactly as Adrienne said, I completely agree that overwhelm is a huge sign, and you just feel like you're moving through there's some kind of inertia that prevents you from the flow. That's when you've tapped out. You haven't got to reconnect for yourself.
Yeah, I think the physical reminder is the physical, impact is a great reminder because, again, I'm the same as Tam. I don't know a facilitator of healing who hasn't experienced, you know, waves of burnout, and for some it has become some really deeply impactful physical, imbalances and autoimmune stuff, and like it that burnout can quickly manifest to, yeah, we don't sit down on purpose. Our body can make us sit down.
I think that's such a relevant point that you've raised there, the physical aspect of burnout, that because we have that, like Leonie pointed out, we have this, it's ingrained in our DNA to be healers, to be medicine people, to do for others. But when we're consistently just pouring out of that cup, I mean, empty cup syndrome is a great term to use. It hits in the physical body, and for a lot of us, eventually it's just physical shutdown, where there's no energy, there's just high fatigue, illness comes along with that, colds, flus, all those great physical symptoms. Leonie, I know you chatted a little bit about the like the red flags or the early warning signs that say like, hey, you're starting to approach burnout. But I want to just unpack the early signs and the red flags a little bit more, because I feel like there's going to be some consistency here for all of us in today's chat, and for those that are going to be watching as well. So Adrienne, I'll keep up with you. Let's chat about your early warning signs and your red flags. What do those look like for you?
I think for me personally, it starts to be just a reactivity, right? Just I have a 7-year-old son, so my nervous system is just a little bit faster to respond to things, right? Like I'm a little bit jumpier, and I start seeing, okay, my body's a little bit more inundated with energy, right? It's a little bit more saturated than it wants to be. And so that burnout, I think Leonie made a great point that burnout just looks like weariness, right? It looks like, I got to do this marketing today. Oh, I got this client at 2 o'clock, and then it's like it feels like an obligation. And then to me, that can manifest even more deeply to like an animosity towards the work, right? My inner child is screaming, where are the people helping me? I'm out here helping all these people. Where's my help? Like that's kind of the progression. And then, once she's yelling, and then, a few days of what's it called? Overwhelm paralysis is usually my next. All of a sudden the few dishes in the sink looks really huge, and all of that. So yeah, my first signs are just kind of a reactivity, and that can look really different. That can look like I simply drop something on the ground, and then my frustration is like real quick through the roof. It can mean something hurting my feelings and crying like really quick, really hard. And so that reactivity can manifest in different ways, but it's just like I always do this with my hand because that's what it feels like. It feels like my body's just more ready. My body's more ready for something.
Wow.
So it's like it's hitting into the emotional regulation. That emotional regulation kind of just goes out the window, and for a lot of us, we're pretty good with regulating our emotions because we need to be. I mean, we sit with all sorts of people with all sorts of things, so we have to regulate ourselves. But when burnout starts hitting, that capacity to regulate goes from like here to, and it just slowly makes its way down till eventually the you have 2 cups in the sink and you're like, why are there so many dishes in my sink, and it's just 2 cups. But because that capacity is it's like the cup drains of the good energy and it just fills up with anger and frustration, and I hate everything. It's honesty for me is kind of what that feels like. Leonie, I don't know if you want to add a couple more of the early signs and the red flags for yourself to the chat here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with everything that you've all said. I think for me also, some of the signs for myself is the calendar, the scheduling. So like if I'm starting to do things and skipping meals or not getting to my dishes or, overloading my calendar where there's no rest time, suddenly the work's encroaching into the rest time, then I realize that I'm crossing the boundaries just from a practical point of view. But I really think that everything that's been said, more emotionally volatile, more sort of sensitive to things that wouldn't normally destabilize me. And then that weariness, that real spiritual weariness towards the work. And what she mentioned about the sort of animosity sometimes can also be a huge telltale sign. But I think it shows for me in my physical body first, fatigue, aches and pains, disturbed sleep, and that sort of hamster wheel of everything that needs to happen, everything that needs to do, and then the mind doesn't calm down, and then I feel like I kind of get an idea that I'm getting overwhelmed, and the paralysis that Adrienne mentioned. I'm actually just repeating what she's saying because I agree, but that paralysis where you actually just sort of look at the list, or the chores or the things, and it's just kind of like, oh gosh. And that's when I sort of have to apprehend myself and say, right, well, I'm trying to be of service here, so I can't be of service if I'm not in the space. So then I try and address some of those things. But my biggest red flag is taking care of myself physically, making sure there's rest, making sure there's healthy food, taking care of my house and my personal life. I tend to negate myself for the work because I'm so passionate for it. And that's when I notice, like when there's too many cups, and that's such a beautiful example, too many cups in the sink, then I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I also think the physicality is a big thing. Like if I'm feeling a lot of pain or I'm feeling a lot of tension or I'm feeling a lot of tearfulness, then I know I've lost my balance.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Have you ever missed the signs of burnout before it was too late? I mean, that for me, back in my early days, I definitely missed I didn't even know what signs to be looking for. I was just like, I'm coping today and I'm not coping the next day. Like, what is this? And it's taken me probably about close to 20 years to really understand like burnout and the signs, and that this is all part of the work that we're doing as practitioners. Have you ever had experiences where you've missed all those signs for burnout and it's just steamrolled you? Leonie, you can carry on with the conversation there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I naturally have a capacity to push myself and to go the extra mile. That's just part of my personality, but it's actually such a subtle thing. It's not like one day you're doing really well and then the next day you feel like you've been hit by a freight train. I mean, that can happen, but it's a slow increment of deterioration of the sense of capacity and the sense of well-being. And I mean, I've fallen into depressions from time to time that way. I've fallen into panic attacks sometimes. So I'm actually, everything seems perfectly fine. This is more when I was younger. Mentally, everything seems fine, but now the body has this physiological experience of the heart is pumping, the hands are sweating, I feel faint. That was one of my big signs where it took me by surprise, because actually mentally things were good. Physically things seemed all right, but I was just overdoing it. And then the panic attack was an example of that. So I think it's very important to check in with ourselves regularly as to where our physical okay levels are, where our boundary levels are. And then, just to really be very mindful of that for ourselves. It's quite tough to you just have this tendency to push and do more and help the next one and be involved in this or be involved in that and never really take stock of what is normal, because in today's society, what is normal? We are living at 24/7, fast-paced, instant delivery, instant gratification. It's a very intense world that we live in. So what actually is our normal? What should we be feeling? How should we be? And that's what my journey has been about, is so that I don't arrive in the places where I feel like I can't do my work.
I love that point that you've raised about the society that we live in, because I think that there's also a lot of pressure and obligation as practitioners. The world around us sees us, and they're like, well, you're a healer, you're a guide, so you've got to be accessible to me 24/7. I need to be able to pick up the phone, and you need to be available. And that's but we're human. I mean, we may have wonderful gifts and be medicine people and blessed that way, but we're still human beings having human experiences. So the societal pressure, let's chat a little bit about that. Adrienne, I don't know if you want to jump into that part of the conversation, just chat about the societal pressure to constantly be on as a healer and how that kind of filters into the whole thing of burnout.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a great conversation to have, that that pressure and then perceived pressure, right? Like, I know we do a lot of the pressuring ourselves, right? Once we get started, we're like, okay, well, why not? Why not help more people? Why not help more people? And so I think that, perceived pressure mixed with the intentionally conditioned pressure, I'll say, of like, do more, be more, help more, hustle, hustle.
Yeah.
I think those things kind of intertwine for a lot of facilitators of healing. Those two things meet, and then our rest is not as restful, because if I'm sitting trying to just enjoy my day, right, there can be this little part of my mind, again, often comes with the burnout, that's saying, well, we do have emails we could schedule. We have events you could post about. There's a
Yeah.
networking event tonight. And so I think that is very much a societal thing, and our society, and a lot of the people some of us work with, even though they're, moving more into the holistic wellness space, they're not many years from very conventional, just wanting a doctor to tell them what to do. Right? They're like fresh out of that box that they've been in for 30, 35, 50, however many years. And so they kind of can switch that energy to us and say, well, you're the healer. No, I'm the facilitator of your body doing its own healing. Right? Like, and my goal with each client is to show them, like, you don't need me. Come back for a refresher every now and then, but cool. I'm not like a once a month kind of practitioner. Come to meditation classes, sure, but private sessions, if we're doing private sessions once a month consistently, it's like, some of the responsibility has to be put back on other people, and so we can facilitate that healing and we can support, but I think we kind of have to separate that conditioned response to help more, do more, and then our own pressure to be needed, right? To feel like our community needs us all the time on.
That's where the boundary parts comes into it. And I know Debjit's got a couple of questions for the two of you around the boundaries that make a difference. So Debjit, I'll hand over to you for a bit.
Thanks, Deb. I mean, I've been enjoying the conversation. I mean, some of the relevant things that have been mentioned, I think we all have gone through this, like the empty cup syndrome, like Leonie mentioned, right? And Adrienne also mentioned that, how the subtle signs of burnout starts appearing in the form of the kind of, like, you start feeling a little bit angry for no reason. You start feeling fidgety. You're seeing your to-do list. You're like, I don't like looking at it, and we try to do all the things, like, I'll just like to honestly share. Today has been a day of burnout for me, the daytime. I woke up feeling like I have a lot of things to do today, need to work on my website. I was excited, honestly speaking. Yesterday was fine. Like Leonie was saying that, some days they just appear. But today, out of the blue, I'm facing burnout. Out of the blue, there is nervous system dysregulation. And I was thinking, like, man, how do you deal with this stuff? So, to both of you guys, like, when you are, doing your spiritual work, your healing work, you have responsibilities, you have committed, let's say, to a client or to a coaching session, and suddenly you are experiencing these bouts of burnout. How do you balance responsibility with self-care? And how do you draw the boundary without, disintegrating your integrity? Let's say. How do you do that? Let's ask to Adrienne first. Adrienne, what do you have to share? We'll move to Leonie after that.
The first two words that come to mind for that are honesty and authenticity. I wouldn't want to go to an energy worker who pushed themselves through burnout to do my session. I just wouldn't. I would want them to come and be honest with me and say, hey, today didn't go as planned. I'm not, this isn't feeling aligned to do this, session you booked a month ago, which again is human nature. Like two energies that booked that session a month ago are completely different today. And yeah, so I just would say honesty and authenticity, and what that's looked like for me personally with sessions is I won't hesitate now to take 5 minutes to sit, put some frequency on and sit with a client and say, hey, thank you so much for coming. I just need a minute to get myself, in this space, right? Yeah, so I think just being honest, and normally once I'm in that space, I can like, okay, all right, we're here now. I remember what I'm doing. And then I believe it almost shifts into like a channeling, right? Because I think spirit will come through on those sessions where we just don't have the capacity. There are times that spirit will kind of come through and do that work as well. So.
Wow, that was so well answered. Like how you shared, like, when you are feeling aligned, that is when the channeling happens. That is when the real work happens. It is not, spiritual work is never just like, you can force into do, because if the higher self doesn't agree, what are you going to do? That was a fantastic answer. Leonie, what do you have to say? How do you balance?
So I agree with what Adrienne says as well. I think to be authentic is the most important thing, because it also keeps us humanized to the client as well. So for myself, I always rely on, stepping into that spirit, that I call it universal energy. I realize that I've somehow stepped out of energy flow. I've stepped out of connection. So if there's something that's really important and that I need to show up for, but I've recognized that I'm maybe not in the space, then I just use my practices to step into divine energy, and just like she said, take a few minutes to be there for myself and to organize myself, and then just trust that that will fill up my cup as needed. And then I also, if I notice it like early enough, I'll try and reschedule if it's possible. But it's really amazing when you put faith and trust in universal energy and you're able to actually sort of put your stuff to the side for that moment or that session. But thereafter, I really try to take note of what has come up for me and put some strategies in place. But my whole healing journey and developmental work has been sort of chiseling away and creating, chiseling away at my bad habits, let's say, and creating a space where I'm able to have this sort of golden energy field around me that I can step into my higher self, as you said, Debjit, that can sort of run the show for that moment. I trust my intuitive self, I trust my spiritual self to do the highest good for myself and for my clients. So that's the best way to do it. But absolutely, if I've got a migraine or if something is just falling apart, I'll just be honest with my clients and say, it's not happening today. Would it be possible to reschedule? If not, I'm going to start the session a few minutes later because I just need to get myself in the right space, Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leonie, for sharing about that. I think a lot of us, even our viewers who are watching this, I think we really need to hear this, that it is okay to just communicate that, that we are not in the most aligned space today to meet and do the work, because it's beneficial for both of us, you and the client, you and the crew, right? And this is something when we do, we bring into the society, like, okay, this is something that we can do. So when you yourself set those boundaries, your clients also understand, okay, this is something I can do in my life. Because I think in today's society, like Leonie was mentioning, what the society is doing is it's more of a performance hustle mindset. And the whole the term, like, the show must go on. Oh, that I think like is there. Like we're constantly thinking like, oh my God, I have come up as a spiritual teacher and I have to show up. I have to show up. Otherwise, what they're going to think about me, what they are going to think about me, and the fear that I'm going to lose a client or I'm going to be judged in this way. So I think that stops a lot of us. That is why I think for a lot of us, we are so grateful that from you, both of you who are healers and practitioners, you are sharing how you in your life are setting boundaries. So, one question I would like to ask before moving forward is I really want to know what do you think about this shift that is happening right now from being a performer, which used to be the hustle culture and the whole thing, to being somebody who is more aligned, taking back your responsibility to yourself first before trying to give to others. You know, are you seeing this shift in your life happening? Have you seen this shift from being a performer to a more aligned version of yourself? So, Adrienne, would you like to share anything about this?
Yeah, I've definitely experienced the shift, and like so many things in this lifestyle, it's a ebb and flow, right? Sometimes my boundaries are a little bit more solid and I know what they are and they're they're here, and then sometimes they're a little bit more wavy, and I think that that absolutely is changing and leaving, performance based stuff. Just the remembering that, oh yeah, I can reschedule, and I think as many facilitators of healing that experience like more of a scarcity mindset, or still working on getting those bills paid, and we feel like, well, if I don't take this client today, are they going to leave? What if they post a bad review? And then you start right back in the performance, right? And the what will society think of me? What wild spinoff can happen from this one reschedule because of a migraine or because of car issues or because XYZ. But yeah, I really see it changing, and like both of y'all have touched on, it shows our clients, oh yeah, like I can have boundaries too, right? I can reschedule a meeting at work if I need to, or I can do this. So I think that leaving that performance focused space is really kind of contagious. It doesn't take much for somebody to remember, oh yeah, I'm free and sovereign too. Oh yeah, I can stick up for myself when need be. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Adrienne. Leonie, I'd like to ask you, how do you deal with this pressure of performance yourself in the healing space?
So I mean, I've definitely fallen victim to that scarcity thing when I was first starting out. Like I had to help every client. I had to be present and available 24/7 because what if they gave me a bad review, or what if they didn't want to come back to me, or and getting the bills paid was a big thing, And I just realized that that's not really what spirit is about, and that not every client and I are always aligned, and not every it's not my responsibility to meet every demand that comes my way. I have this work that I love, and I have these gifts, if you like, that I have and that I love to share. But I also have a responsibility to myself towards walking my talk, and I ask my clients, with coaching and sometimes through the astrology as well, and definitely through the tarot, I ask of them to step up to radical self-care, and that's not just a bubble bath. That's like taking responsibility and accountability for our shadow, and that's hard work. And I can't ask them to do that if I'm not able to do that. So I really try to show up as much as I can for my clients. And I most of the time I am able, because it's something that I'm passionate about and it's something that I'm good at. But I had to move into a space of really being authentic about what I'm doing as a practitioner, and what my business is about, and who are the type of clients that are supposed to be finding their way to me, and trusting the process, that what I have to offer is valuable, and that there are people who will find value in it, and that my life and my self-experience is just as valuable. So I can't neglect myself in the process. So I've really moved into a process of, as much as I want my business to expand, and I'm so grateful for the support that I have, I also know that it's not about being necessarily on every billboard everywhere. It's about valuable, nourishing work that leaves me feeling fulfilled afterwards as well. So I've kind of tried to balance it with my own self-care and my own accountability to myself as well. And then just taking a breather every now and then, because as Adrienne was saying, your rest is not restful. Like, I think for a lot of us, what is rest? How do you do that thing? When does it come in? We don't know, because my rest time, my leave from my day job, my days off, all of my energy goes towards my personal business and my clients, because that's when I have the time. But now I've really, in my old age, I've really sort of moved towards scheduling time for myself as well, because that's how I can describe it.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, this discussion, I think, is something that the world needs to hear right now, because these are the actual real life challenges we are experiencing as healers that often does not get talked about. We see in the social media that, every healer is, doing their thing, showing their best face out, but in the backside of things, this is what is going on, behind the curtain, right? So when we are sharing these things, and how both of you who are actively in the healing space, I think a lot of people who are right now watching us, and they're thinking like, man, I'm not alone in this, people who are actively having a spiritual business, who are already on the body, they have this, then I don't need to feel alone. I think that's one of the most amazing thing that is coming out from this Healers Roundtable. The feeling of a community that we are, who are going through the same, challenges and the explorations. Thank you so much, Leonie and Adrienne. With that, we are going to move to the next segment of today's topic, which is restoration and recovery, which Leonie was mentioning. I would like to ask Tam to ask a few questions on the topic of restoration and recovery. So Tam.
Thanks, Debjit. I think we're just raising so many valid points in this conversation, and as Debjit pointed out, as much as this is a healers roundtable discussion, it's predominantly for the healers to watch and relate to. There's absolutely, the public should definitely watch this series, because there is a very big misconception that healers have their shit together, and we don't. we really don't always have our shit together. Like, we're still human like everyone else. If we were thousands of years ago in smaller villages, we may have our lives together a bit better, but we get up and we pay our bills, and have rent and kids and families and day-to-day obligations just like everyone else. So let's chat a bit about what does actually help you when you do hit those stages of burnout. We often think, it's like, let me just take a day's rest, or let me go have a bubble bath. But I think it's a lot more than just rest days and bubble baths. So Leonie, what's helped you come back from burnout over the years? What's really helped you?
So a couple of things, but just in terms of what you were saying, as healers, there's this beautiful saying that my spiritual mentor said to me, with spiritual enlightenment. So I think it's a Chinese proverb or a Zen proverb where it's like you chop wood and hold water, and then you become enlightened, and then you chop wood and hold water, right? So it's like the life stuff still continues, and that's what I was thinking about as you were speaking. So certainly for me, I've got some steadfast practices that have helped me through my life, and I just revert to those. So meditation is one. Chakra dance is another one by Natalie Southgate. Is a really beautiful practice that I help to realign my chakras. I go for body stress release, which is like a chiropractic process that we have in South Africa here. And then I just take time, as everyone was saying, I take time to be with myself and listen to my body. I do practical things at looking at my scheduling. But when I was younger and I faced a very, very serious burnout when I was consulting a lot one-on-one, I actually stepped away from my practice for a good 3.5 years, and I'd gone to study psychology. So I'm not saying everybody must do this. That's not what I'm saying. But I realized that I had struggled with the boundary between what's my responsibility and what's the client's responsibility. And I was taking on all these projections of my clients' well-being and healing, and I was trying to fix them and help them and be present for them, and just totally wiping myself out. So I went to do some of the work in terms of coaching and counseling as to where are the boundaries and how to help equip myself to that. And that I've now implemented in my practice for the past 10 years, which has helped me a lot. So just being aware of whose responsibility is what, like Adrienne was saying earlier. So that's the main thing. But I really would say it's getting into the main practices. Like I spend time in my garden every day. I do my gratitude stuff. Really stepping into those steadfast practices that have really helped me. I see a therapist and I do family constellations occasionally, just so that my stuff, that I'm constantly still working on my stuff, reflecting on my stuff, so that I can be at my best self for the work. I still have to work on the rest part, the full rest part, but I do take time to do things that are important to my heart and soul, that I can feel full and excited about the work that I do.
I think that's such a valid point that you've raised there. That self-care looks like taking responsibility and accountability for your own stuff as a practitioner. I mean, we're still human. We have an entire lifetime that we've lived. We have our own traumas. We have our ups and our downs. And for a lot of us, I think that maybe one of the big things that hits on our burnout is that we don't stop and take time to do our own work. And it just backlogs, and then it backlogs along with all our client stuff as well. And those lines become blurred. It's like, where's my client and where am I? Whose stress am I picking up in this session? So the importance of doing your own work as a practitioner, I think your work as a practitioner is more important than the work that you do with clients, because you can't be at full capacity if you have a whole bucket load of stuff sitting there that you haven't processed. So, shadow work and your past experiences, your own codependence. Codependence was a big one for me to work through. Growing up with a brother that was a drug addict, codependency was rife in my family. That's how we all functioned. So, and having an older brother that was a drug addict, that natural capacity to be like, oh, I want to help people and I want to make them all better and I want to take away people's pain. So for me, I had to take that step away, like you did as well, Leonie, for a couple of years. I stepped away from my work. I put my tarot cards down professionally for a number of years, because I didn't have the lines and the boundaries and the things in place to keep me safe as a practitioner. I was beyond burnt out when I put my cards down a couple of years ago. So I think that that's such an important thing for us as practitioners to remember. You've got to do your own work, because it's going to creep up on you at some stage, and you don't want that creeping up in the middle of a session. You're with a client and you're like, my life's falling apart. Your poor client. So I love that you've put that point out there. Adrienne, do you want to jump into the conversation and chat to us about what helps you come back from burnout?
Yeah, for me, I notice community, right? That has become my biggest gentle re-entry back into where I want to be, right? A lot of times burnout walks hand in hand with isolation for me, right? When I'm that burnout, then I'm not even really calling friends to hang out because I'm scared I'm gonna say something and hurt their feelings or like I'm just like, never mind, I'll just just keep my little angry ass home. Feeling like a gremlin. So nobody loves the gremlin, and then you're spiraling. But yeah, community is huge for me in the phase of burnout. I have realized jubilant conversation and joy helps my body to purge funk, right? Like as it filters through my body, it's taking funk with it. Being in and around water is another big one. If I can spend a day at a pool or with my feet in a river or at the ocean, that can immediately help. And then just awareness sometimes. Sometimes it is literally just saying, "Oh, hold on, I'm burning myself out. I'm spinning rubber," or whatever. I try to think of as many like acronym or not acronyms, but would that be a synonym? Anything's is possible. Oh, I'm burning rubber. I got the pedal to the metal. Like anything that can help remind me, oh, you're doing too much. Like let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. That awareness. And then I have a process of kind of saying, because when you get into a certain level of burnout, especially when we talked about that overwhelm paralysis state, right? Then I might not even know what I need, right? And I have this super supportive community of people who are like, what do you need? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, your guess is as good as mine. Try something and we'll see if it works. So when I'm feeling like that, I'll say, okay, do I feel like I need to be soothed or stimulated? And then that can help the process of, oh, okay, do I need more like of a hard, loud, fast release like the rage room or a punching bag or something like that? Or do I need the float spa or a massage or more gentle, easy? So that's where I start.
I love your points on community. I know I do that when I feel like I'm approaching burnout, or I'm going through the whole, am I really meant to be on this path, and is this work for me? I go into hermit mode, like full hermit mode. I don't want to know anybody. And a lot of like we do that. A lot of us do that, and I think it's again that misconception that we because we need to be seen as having our lives together all the time, and people put us on the pedestals and they do all that stuff, that we've got to hide when we're going through burnout. We can't come out and be like, okay, well, I'm drained to hell and I can't function right now. We feel like we would be doing the world a disservice if we did that. If we were that authentic and honest with the world, we were like, I am beyond burnt out. I actually can't function right now. Like, the world would fall apart if we said something like that. So I love that for you, one of the things you do is you reach for your community. And for a lot of us, I think if we did reach for our community, it would probably help us a lot faster, because we're not trying to navigate it alone. And sometimes we do need to say, hey, I'm really burnt out. And someone says, well, what do you need? Well, I don't actually know. Okay, well, let's figure it out together. Instead of spinning your wheels in your own head, trying to figure out the burnout by yourself, where did the burnout come from? How do I get through this? Having that external set of eyes that says, hey, I'm seeing this. Maybe this could work for you. Or hell, just someone to give you a hug, because some days maybe that's all you need is just someone to hold you and say, like, hey, I've got you. I think it was Leonie that said earlier on, where are the people to hold us? Where's my support structure? And I think that that's something that a lot of us feel like we can't have a support structure because, well, we are the support structure. So how can we have what we're supposed to be doing for others? So it's that weird pressure that we're just putting on ourselves, which just adds to the burnout, right? So we've spoken a bit about rest days and taking days off, but what is deep rest. What does rest actually look like for the two of you, and how do you build that into your day-to-day lives? Is it very specific days that you have off? Is it when you need it? What do those deep rest days actually look like? Adrienne, I'll let you carry on.
That is one I'm still working on figuring out. Yeah, a lot of times what I'm telling myself is rest in that moment is more distraction, is more at home with TV, or there's still some sort of stimulation, right? Laying in my bed and I'm resting, but really I'm scrolling and still getting, visual stimuli 1,000 miles an hour. But so for me, I would say my personal rest right now is being outside with nothing somewhere. And that can be a variety of places, but it's me literally saying, okay, phone stays inside or phone stays in the car. I'm not bringing headphones. I'm not bringing anything. I'm just being outside.
Yeah, nature is yes to the nature. If you're going to isolate yourself as a practitioner in burnout, go isolate yourself in nature.
Yeah.
I mean that's where we come from, right? That is our true nature. So I love that as like that's your go-to.
And
Leonie.
Leonie,
Yeah.
I was just going to say real quick, Leonie, you mentioned chakra dance earlier. I love chakra dance. Their connection to nature and their music is so beautiful. And movement, which it sounds kind of counterproductive, but intentional movement for me is kind of rest, because my burnout a lot of times is like constriction and very limited movement, kind of physical stagnation. So even though it sounds backwards, my rest is things like chakra dance or somatic movement as well. So
Yeah, it's a beautiful practice that Natalie has come up with, a feminine form of meditation where it's not sitting still, it's actually moving with your eyes closed to music and stuff like that. So you really get a chance to be present with yourself and you take that me time. So that's one beautiful example. I agree with Adrienne, the outside, water, all of those things are so spot on. They feel so restorative, And for myself, for resting, I also am guilty of the odd TikTok, rabbit hole. But detoxing from the phone, being at home with my cats, and then taking the time to schedule meaningful and safe social experiences. Because when I'm burnt out, I can't necessarily go to a sports game or a rave. I'll feel too overstimulated. So I also do that isolation thing. So I know with my core group of family friends, if you like, that have become my family, I can just reset with them and I can talk about my stuff and they can be there for me. And those are things that I do. And then just something that I forgot to mention also, I find nutrition is really important and it's something that I struggle with. But when I'm burnt out, to really focus on what I'm eating, what I'm putting into because I have a tendency to move towards the takeout when I'm stressed or whatever it might be, and it's just adds to the whole problem. So that's something I've really actively started to try and take seriously, is how to be there for myself when I'm in a state of burnout. So I agree with what Adrienne was saying, and yeah, just really, really sort of actively carving out space for yourself to have your time and your reconnect with universal energy, because that's what it's about, right? Or spirit or the divine, whatever name you want to give it, and to just sort of really, really check in. And then if I have a big speed wobble, then I reach to my spiritual community as well. And I say, listen, I can't see this thing that I'm tripping over. What is it? Can you help me? Because I actually can't see it. And I'm still open to being helped in that space by my community. And that's actually something that I think is so important in the spiritual community, is that it's so beautiful to see the space opening up to being more collaborative and supportive. I think initially there was a lot of that sort of scarcity practice. So there was a lot of gatekeeping around what we can do and share. And then you get these amazing people who are just opening up the space with these beautiful practices. I mean, chakra dance is one, critical mass is another, where it's like, these are the things, these are who we are, we're here to work together. It's not an isolated or insular process. And there's so many practitioners to help one another and the clients. So there really isn't this thing of scarcity, really. So community is important to me too, definitely.
Love that.
I
Yeah,
love
community has oh, go for it, Adrienne. Sorry, me too.
I was just gonna say, Leonie, I love that you mentioned nutrition. As much as my heart wanted to resist that one, that is one of the quickest ways out of burnout is a water or juice fast for a day or two. Right. And like truly deeply know in that 1 or 2 days, oh, everything will be okay. No, that's right. Okay. That is one of the huge ones. And there's some really wonderful herbs and different plant medicines that can also help, you know, help that boost out of burnout. And I will forever think of burnout as a speed wobble. Forever. I've made the references to a car, but that speed wobble makes it so much better. If you can pay attention when it starts to vibrate a little bit, you're going to be way better than waiting till you're like, ah! So thank you for that mental picture. It will
You're
be with me
welcome.
throughout my journey.
I'm glad. And it's such a common saying that we have, and it doesn't you don't realize in different cultures that that people don't have the same sayings, but it is actually, you just picture this little kid on a bike, like without the training wheels. That is exactly what it feels like. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think the nutrition aspect is important, because we're constantly on the go and we're seeing clients, and I got to do my social media, and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't fed myself, and that's your diet contributes to burnout quite a lot. With moving to the US and not fully understanding like what the food is like here and how bad the food can be here. That was probably one of the things that really nailed me, when I hit my bad burnout in 2023, where I had to close my business down because there wasn't anything left. And diet had played a huge part in that. Literally just ate myself up from the inside out, just filled with toxins. So there was no space for anything else. So yeah, nutrition I think is a big part of it. When you do hit burnout, feed yourself, nourish yourself, because your body's looking for that. All the bodies are looking for that nutrition. Feed yourself with food and feed yourself with good community as well. And it is very refreshing to see that in the healing spaces, your community is starting to open up a lot more. I remember, Leonie, when I met you, nearly 15 years ago, the community was small. I was like, oh, I've got a bestie in the spiritual community. I've got someone who, talks like me and thinks like me and, does the things that are similar to me. And then when I traveled to Southeast Asia, and that kind of expanded a bit more, and I'm like, oh, there's more of us over here. And, then I moved here and I'm like, there's a whole bunch of us over here. So it is really nice to see the community wanting to open up and be like, hey, we're here for one another, collaboration over competition, because that is something that fuels the burnout, as well as that feeling of I've got to do this all by myself. I've got to see all of these clients by myself. I've got to help the whole world by myself. I carried that for many years, where it's my life mission to be here to fix the world, and that burnt me out, just having that mindset. So the feed yourself with good food and good community, I think are good ways to either just negate burnout completely or to help you get back from burnout. Saying no to people, because being a healer and helping and fixing, like, it's so ingrained in who we are. How has learning to say no helped you with kind of putting the boundaries in place and helped you alleviate a bit of that burnout? Leonie, I'll let you answer that one first.
That's been massively important, Tam, like massively important. You and I discussed this when you were going through your burnout in 2023. It's like really realizing that it's that the responsibility of the healing or the development or the growth or is not necessarily on our shoulders. Every individual has to take that for themselves, and that we actually dishonor them by trying to carry that burden for them. We have to just facilitate so that they can do the work themselves. And saying no is hard, especially if you are in the service industry, because it's against it's counterintuitive. Let's say you actually want to help, but sometimes we run the risk of enabling by helping people who don't want to help themselves. So we have to actually be very conscious of that codependency tendency and all of that kind of stuff. So if you are someone that struggles with saying no, and certainly I was someone who struggled to say no, I started with not yet. Sure, I can do that, but not yet. I can do it. And then what I often found is that with the delay in the agreement, I got better and better at being able to say no. And I just got strict with my structure of how I did my work. You know, this is my session times. This is when I'm available. This is what it costs. This is how it works. And I set up a professional working environment. And that's been much better for me. Where it's been quite hard, where I've had to learn to say no, which has been more challenging for me, is in the social and personal sphere. Because I do the work that I do, which is demanding both in my day job and in my personal life. Sometimes I'm peopled out. Sometimes I'm energied out. I can't actually have another conversation. And I had a lot of guilt around that with personal family commitments, with friends. And I've just had to say, I'm sorry, I actually can't do that. And it's taken me a while, but I've arrived at a place where I've got community that respects and understands that, and they feel comfortable enough to say the same back to me. Like, my heart wants to, but my body is not in it today, so I'm not going to come to that party or this thing. And I've just really listened to that, and my body tells me when it's a no. You know, I'm too tired, or I'm too this. And then other times I have to catch myself and say, okay, yes, but you haven't spent time with anybody in 2 months outside of work, so you must go. And then, like Adrienne said, then you get sort of reinvigorated through community, you know. So it's just trying to be aware, I guess, of what feels good and what feels not good, you know, because you can feel when you leave something that you've just done, you feel elevated or pumped up or good or satisfied, or other times you can just, oh, that was heavy, that was hard, you know, and you got to respect that. And for those of us that are people pleasers, you've got to embrace the power of being disliked, you know, because most of it's imaginary anyway. But so what, you know, you're the main character in this story, you get to say no.
You're the main character. It's all right to be the villain sometimes. Sometimes the villain has cooler costumes.
You know?
I love that answer. Because, you know, saying no isn't just saying no in the professional capacity. It's also learning to say no to the social obligations, where it's like, I have had a day where I've seen 8 clients and I've done a whole lot of admin, and there is, you know, empty cup syndrome, as you've said it. And I love that you've hit on that thing of having professional structure. I know for a lot of the healers out there, we don't like structure. It feels too 3D, it feels too constricted, it feels too much like the world that we don't really work within. But it helps a lot having those structures in place. You know, have a cancellation policy, you know, have all the paperwork in place, have set days and times where it's like, you know, these are my consulting hours, and do your best to stick to that structure, because the structure supports both you and it supports your clients. You know, because your client needs to cancel with you and they're like, cool, I need to cancel, how does that work? And you're like, well, I don't know, because I haven't done that part of my business yet. So as much as our work is not really here in the 3D world, we do still need the support structures that come from the 3D world. So I love that you've raised that part of the conversation for us, because a lack of structure is definitely going to cause burnout. For me, in my early days where I didn't have those structures, it was chaos on for most days. Now, how do you function in chaos? You don't, you burn out. Adrienne, anything to add to that about saying no and how that's looked like on your journey?
Yeah, I really appreciate the reminder about structure. And I know my experience of leaving. I was a social worker and kind of left that super structured state employee 9 to 5 world, right? And then I swung the pendulum to no structure at all, right? Like free, we're flowing, everything. And then I'm kind of like, okay, well, come bring it back. Like we have to meet somewhere in the middle. And I think that kind of for me goes with boundaries, right? Boundaries are fluid and I can change them at any time. And so to me, that helps when I'm telling somebody something that, I maybe I don't have the capacity for something right now. And, Leonie, like you mentioned, kind of later can be, I can easily say I don't have the capacity for that right now, but I'll let you know if that changes, right? So that way the ball is still not in my court. I'm not saying check back with me in a week. I'm not saying ask again. I'm saying not right now. And I heard a quote one time that's really like flipped a switch for me. It was the quote something along the lines of like, if somebody is offended by your boundary, it's because they benefited from you not having it. Right.
Oh,
And
that's
so
powerful.
for me, that flipped that Taurus pride into, oh no, if you get pissed off at my no, that's because you were either consciously or subconsciously trying to take advantage of something, right? Like you cared more about what you asked me about than you cared about my well-being and safety. And so that's a little issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first
Yeah,
time I
that's
heard
so
that, it
good.
just made so much sense.
I've heard that saying before, and it does make a lot of sense, because your boundary is the way it was explained to me really well is that it's your boundary protects your yard. So, the boundary is like the fence line around your yard. So everything inside here is mine. If my yard is like chaos, well, that's all on me to clear up that chaos, but I mustn't let that chaos filter out past my fence line. And if my neighbor's yard is in chaos, they've got to keep their chaos there. And, if their chaos is now encroaching on my fence line and, the kid's ball is in my backyard and their hockey stick is in my backyard and their dog keeps running into my backyard, like, you're crossing my boundaries, man. Like stop that. And that saying is super, super helpful because it does hand the responsibility back to the person, where it's like, oh, you're overstepping the boundary because me not having the boundary they originally, it benefited you, but it wasn't benefiting me. So, here is the line, and let's redefine that. I'm going to hand back to Debjit to chat a bit about the long-term sustainability side of this conversation.
Before we switch,
Right.
can I share one more quick thing before we switch?
Absolutely.
So, as we're talking about boundaries, something that I often have to do to myself is look at the reality, and I have never had a person get mad at a boundary I placed. Never. Not that they shared with me anyway. If they did, they kept it to themselves, and that's great. But right now, I'm 100% people have respected the boundary that I've placed and been apologetic or really shifted their actions from that point. So it's like anxiety can turn down because nobody's ever been mad at us or hated us forever because I told them no. So
Yeah, I think what Adrienne is saying is so important because there's actually something from a psychological point of view, there's actually something so important in maintaining a boundary because it's also helpful to the other person who might, up until then, not actually realized that they're encroaching on someone's boundaries and what that might feel like. Sometimes it can be totally unconscious and they're not aware of that. So sometimes that process of actually putting a boundary is also helpful to the other person because it sort of reflects an awareness to them oh, how do I contain myself? And so sometimes it can be a helpful experience for both. And certainly, as Adrienne's saying, if the relationship can handle that navigation of discussing boundaries, that relationship strengthens into a much healthier space. So that is a very valid and important thing from a psychological point of view as well.
Uh-huh.
I think that's
Thank
such
you
a
so
valid
much.
point that you've raised there. And it makes me think of the something called the Johari window, which is something I learned about when I did my counseling certification. So your Johari window, you have 4 panes in your window glass. And the first one is what you show to the world and the world knows about you. And then the next one down is what you know about yourself, but the world doesn't. And then there's what you know about the world and the world knows about itself. And then there's that final pane where like you don't know what's there. It's all that unconscious stuff, your biases, and you're thinking that people are gonna be mad at you because you're putting the boundary down. So all that stuff that you don't know. So yeah, having these conversations where it's like, hey, here's the boundary. You kind of overstep that, and they're like, oh, that's a boundary. Like we can actually put that down for ourselves. It sheds light on that that window pane where we don't know what's sitting in there. So that made me think of the Johari window. So I love that insight. Debjit, I'll hand over to you for a bit.
Thank you so much, Tam. I mean, I've been enjoying the whole conversation about boundaries because talking about how to hold space, which all the healers do, we hold space for other people who are going through their journeys, who are going through their challenges. It's very important that we are holding space for ourselves because you cannot hold space when your cup is entirely full. That is not going to happen, right? And, one thing that I would like to talk about, because we're going to talk about how to hold space in a sustainable way and how it connects to the boundaries. Because one of the things I think, whenever we enter into the healing space and we start this journey, we start feeling like, you know what, setting boundaries and holding space seems like connected, because if I don't hold boundaries, my energy gets drained and I can't function, because I need my presence, I need my alignment, I need all of that. But then setting boundaries, if there are a lot of us, I mean, I have had my own fair share of challenges, but I've seen many of my clients also have shared that setting boundaries feels very much challenging because they have not necessarily been people pleasers, but they have been like the very good people, but they have been taken advantage of and they had no clue. And now, while we talk, we start to understand, like, no, you know what? You need to set boundaries there. That need not be done. They are taking advantage of you. But boundary setting seems like saying a lot of no. And when a person has not said no, one is like afraid, like, if I start saying no, I might lose this relationship. I might lose that relationship, or this relationship that I had, this long-term friendship that I had for 10 years, 15 years, that might just get broken. Because from personal experience, I've seen that setting boundaries is much easier with new relationships than with old relationships. If you are a new person, I can say, okay, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. But if I've allowed somebody to do a certain way, this relationship for a long time, and now I'm thinking of changing, it's changing the dynamics of relationships, right? So be it clients, be it personal relationships, be it family, be it friends, it's like in the spiritual journey, one of the things it becomes that we have to say no. So how do you guys battle this fear or challenge if you face them at all? Starting with Adrienne, what would you have to say?
I would just say that I kind of dance with that fear by just saying, well, that anybody who's offended by my boundary probably isn't aligned to life right now, right? Or if they are offended, can they calmly express it and, you know, and we talk about it from there. And it really is what you said about it being so much easier for new relationships to just, we start with the boundaries, then instead of
Yeah.
going, old relationships to say, hey, I know you've been doing this for 10 years, but like, I don't like it right now. I never liked it, but I'm just now being able to say that's huge. And that fear of relationships ending over that is very real. Yeah, so for me, it's just like, well, everybody that I deal with loves me deeply. Um, and so they'll either talk to me, or if it's that serious for them, they'll end their relationship, and that's okay too.
That is
Same
so
with
true.
clients, if a client was ever offended that I had a migraine and couldn't make a session, then that's probably not a client
Yeah.
that's not a client I would be aligned to work with. So yeah.
That is so true. That is so true. The recognition that, if I'm not feeling aligned with somebody or something or a relationship, that is not meant to be. This is, I think, one of the biggest lessons that we are all learning in the spiritual journey. And I really liked how Tam mentioned about like how boundaries are like fences, and when you cross them, you're not doing the right thing, right? And if you allow somebody to cross them, you are not doing the right thing. And I think like that idea is so helpful, because I remember when I first time started understanding like, oh, boundaries are like really fences. Like if it's like my door, if I did not have a door in my home, let's say, what would happen? Everybody coming in and out in my home doing their own thing. And I'd be like, this is my home. I mean, like, I don't think you should do that. But they would be like, but you don't have a door. And I'd be like, that is so true. Because I actually have not placed a door. So when you are allowing somebody to be in your house 24/7, and you're not placed a door, first time putting that door would feel like, you are coming off as offensive or intrusive or whatever. But then again, that is your right. And I think that is where we are learning. So, Leonie, what would you have to say? How do you deal with the challenges of maintaining the changes in the dynamics of relationships, especially old relationships, when setting
Mm.
boundaries?
I absolutely agree with you. I think it is one of the most challenging aspects of personal growth, and people realizing, what they deserve or what they've been allowing in their previous younger ignorance, let's call it, or their unawareness or that sort of thing, or their conditioning. There's lots of terms that we can do. And I just think that people have to be aware of their younger self and just forgive them for their transgressions. We didn't know any better back then. And so I think that if you are brave enough to try and put the boundaries in place with existing relationships, and like Adrienne said, if there's then some volatile reaction to you wanting to put something in place that works for you, then I don't know how truthful or valid that relationship is anymore for you in your new state. It's like that little cartoon that we all see where there's the caterpillar and the butterfly, and the caterpillar saying to the butterfly, you've changed. It's like, maybe now we are in different spaces. But I truly believe that the relationships that are nourishing and meant to be part of your life are able to navigate those changing territories. And like Adrienne said so validly, and like you said, Debjit, if that person is now, struggles to relate to you or struggles to have a friendship with you because you've got a door on your house, that's an unreasonable expectation on their part. So
Yeah.
and this is something that's so important in psychology and the therapy work, is seeing things clearly, seeing relationships clearly, seeing myself versus the other, seeing what's mine, seeing what's theirs. And a lot of the time, for fear of loneliness or for fear of loss, we rose tint the situation, or we twist the situation. It's not that person, it's me actually. Or we do these strange things to make it more comfortable so that we can keep the supposed connection. But the truth is, when you start taking care of yourself and you start putting boundaries in place and you start respecting yourself and radical self-care, like really putting yourself first, the relationships that are meant for you will come. And part of the work is shedding the ones that don't, and shedding the ones, seeing them for what they are. And it's not a judgment. It's not saying this person is bad. It is simply saying that in my butterfly form, this new form that I've become, I actually can't do caterpillar things anymore. I just can't. I don't want to. I choose not to. I need to find other butterflies, and you have to trust. You have to trust that the butterflies will come. That's the best way that I can describe it. And I think it's horrendously difficult work to put boundaries in, especially in existing relationships with family, friends. And there is a fallout. There is a type of fallout, but people must do it. It's part of the work. And then you find your butterfly colony, and how wonderful for you.
Oh my God. You explained it so well. I'm glad you mentioned the whole butterfly caterpillar thing, because that is precisely what is happening for a lot of us who are, shedding the densities, who are healing, who are coming out as their higher version. We are almost like taking a new birth, so we might as well just, face it, like we are not the same person anymore. And I remember for personally myself, like when I was coming out of my dark night of the soul and I was facing the whole energetic overwhelm, couldn't go out for like years. Going into the crowd feels like energy training. I have to come back and do, restoration and everything. It was so difficult for me to express to my, very close friends that, this is what is going on, because I would like, nobody would understand, like, and I didn't understand how to communicate what is going on, right? But much later, after many, many hardships of trying to go into the crowd and feeling completely drained out, I finally started communicating that, hey, I feel this way. I feel this way. And I saw my friends actually understanding me. And I'm like, how is that possible? They just understood. I thought they would never understand. And I think one of the most amazing thing happens, like talking on the topic of boundaries, is communication itself, right? Boundaries cannot happen if you do not allow yourself to communicate your boundaries and what you need and who you are and what you have become, right? So I think one of the most magical thing happens is like you start communicating more about what your needs are, your boundaries gets automatically expressed, and the right people and the wrong people get separated at that very moment. The right people would understand, and they'll be like, well, absolutely, if you're not feeling like that, why would I like you to have that? Please, do what you need to do, come out when you need to come out. But the wrong people would try to, coax you or say, oh, you're crazy. They'll try to play with your mind, and you would understand immediately that discernment happens. So I think the moment you put your boundaries, you kind of begin the process of discerning the right people from the wrong ones. And that is, I think, the gift of boundaries. It brings balance within, it brings balance without, right? Now, coming to the topic of space holding, which is so much connected to the topic of boundaries, I would like to share and ask this question, like, as we hold boundaries, our ability to handle other people's challenges, help other people, hold space for other people increases, because we are creating that capacity for ourselves, right? We are kind of like becoming true leaders who are doing what we are teaching, basically. So when we hold space for ourselves, what we are teaching kind of is aligned with what we are sharing, right? So both of you, have you seen in your life how setting boundaries has allowed you to hold space for others? Has it increased your ability to hold space for others? How it has happened? Adrienne, would you like to share?
Yeah, I think that kind of happens naturally, right? As the boundaries happen, I think we just have more capacity to hold space. For me, one of my most important boundaries, and especially those old relationships, is not allowing people to just come trauma dump. Right. I've lived in my house for 17, 18 years, and it's only been probably the last 3 years that I told a couple people, okay, no more stopping by, like, please call before you come, because for a long time, it was like great stopping by. And then it was like, oh, she'll keep holding stuff. Okay. Like, and then next thing I know, multiple relationships had gotten wildly imbalanced where, somebody leaves after being here for 2 hours. And I'm like, wait, they never even asked, like, how are you? Right? They just came in the door and they went, feel so much better, and then left. Right. And then that kind of started coming to a head where one year I was having a birthday party and the house next door to me was for rent, and a couple friends were like, oh, we should come move next door, right? And I was like, oh, if any of y'all move next door, y'all would have to have a therapist. And like they were, what do you mean? And I'm like, do y'all know all the stuff that you come dump at, like, and I use the terms dump at my door, right? And then I unintentionally hurt a couple people's feelings, but they had never even slowed down to pay attention to the fact that that's what was happening. And so for me, that holding space comes from understanding that I was also contributing to that, right? Like I was loving being absorbed in somebody else's stuff, so I wasn't thinking about my own stuff, right? I was loving feeling needed and like I'm the only person that you can talk to. Oh, that's not an honor to me anymore. No, I have a great list of therapists. I don't want to be the only person anybody talks to. Whereas in my younger, like boundaryless healer days, it was an honor for me to say, oh, I'll hold everybody's secrets, right? Oh, I'm the one everybody wants to come to, and then they leave when they feel better. And I never paid attention to how I was feeling when they left.
Right.
And so I realized like, oh, like they feel way lighter, but I'm over here feeling way heavier. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that allowed me, when I saw the difference between, okay, well, what's holding space and what's being dumped on, right? Like what the difference in that.
Wow. Wow. I mean, so many similarities in all of our journey. And I'm thinking like, wow, I have had the same experience where I was like, oh, now I have the ability to transmute other people's emotions. Why don't I put it into practice to the people who are like literally dumping stuff on me? And I was like, wow, they come to me, they like speaking to me, they talk about all their challenges for an hour and then they just go feeling better. And then I have to do the release and everything. And I'm like, I can't talk to this person for the next month. Please, God, hope they don't call me. Like, seriously. But there was this sense of pride, like, oh my God, they come to me. Like, they really share their problems and deep, deep, deep challenges. And I'm like, oh, I can take in everything. It took so long to understand that, this is not balanced. I mean, like, I'm not getting a chance to share about my stuff, and they can't, when I share, they don't have the ability to hold space. I'm like, this is not a balanced relationship. Balanced relationship should be like we hold space for each other. You don't just dump stuff on me and then you leave. I'm not a dustbin, for Christ's sake, right? So, right. So, Leonie, what do you think about this? Have you experienced some of these things, and how has setting boundaries has also increased your ability to hold space for others?
Yeah, I think what you both said is super significant. So the first thing I just wanted to touch on was where you were discussing, the dark night of the soul. So I think that is something that most spiritual facilitators and healers go through, and it is a very isolating process. And I think that it's a necessary step, because of the isolation, you discover yourself in that darkness, and you compost and you build from that space. But it is something that's all, that deep sort of hopelessness and all those really challenging emotions that come through that process are unfortunately so shamed in the modern world. You're not allowed to feel like that. We must embrace life and love everything about it 24/7, otherwise there's something wrong with us. So it's hard to talk about those things, but it's so wonderful when you move through those processes and you are able to communicate them with people who do understand. And it's even better when you're going through it to be able to have a facilitator, a support structure, as someone who doesn't try and take you out of it, but rather sits with you in it, because you have to go through this very important process. And I think that is a lot of, what shadow workers do. And as you said, it can feel difficult sometimes because you have to keep yourself very aware as the facilitator that you're not getting too enmeshed in their pain or their experience or even their survival. That's not your part. Your part is to support and to reflect and to hold the space. So it can be very challenging to have those boundaries in place, but it's very significant to honor the soul that has come to you or that is with you to do its own thing, however that outcome might be. And that's something that I really had to learn, to take a step back, to honor the other soul, trust it to do its process. So that was the one thing I wanted to mention. And then I'm really glad that we're opening up to sharing about how challenging, it is to be a human being in this world. And that through being open about that, this is where we discover the gold in the shadow, which is people who get it, people who understand, and people who love you through those processes. And then you start to get the real meaningful, deep, connective stuff, which makes you feel good and fills your heart and elevates you up to magical possibilities and all the rest of it. Going to your question, I don't know if it's just a capacity that I have, but I have a day job where I work with people in a retail sense, a medical retail sense. And it's so funny because a client will come up to my table and I actually have a box of tissues there because I'll be like, how are you? What can I get for you today? And then before I know it, they're in tears over something. And they're like, I don't know. I never cry like that. I'm like, don't worry. It's my counter. It happens here. It just, they offload because they can sense. I think this kind of work, you create a safe space unintentionally. You don't even realize that you're doing it. It's part of your energy field. It's like, I can hold it. I can, but I think the differentiation that we have to make is it's not that I can hold it for you. It's that I can handle it while you hold it, I think is what we should be saying, maybe. So I just have those experiences where people burst into tears at my counter in my day job where I'm doing something completely different. So it's something that comes, with. And then in terms of friendships, I've had to be so strict with myself. I have this tendency to mother and to heal and to fix and to help and to try. I go into my facilitator space almost naturally. And then the relationship becomes unbalanced. And so I've really had to apprehend myself. I can't blame anybody else for feeling that way. I've had to really apprehend myself, as Adrienne and you have said. It's really being aware of not contributing to it. And my home has become my sanctuary where I detox there. It's my space. I do my things. I recalibrate. I do all of those kinds of things. But it is important. And I think I've realized that everybody who comes to me, I do my best by them, but ultimately when they leave my space, it's up to them. And I trust them to do it. And I have to leave it there because otherwise I get too involved and then I get drained. So.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing about this, Leonie. One thing came up to me while you were sharing about this, that how people come to your counter and they start crying. And I think a lot of us who are in the healing space, who have done their own shadow work, healed their own, shadows and emotions, we have that energy going on where people get drawn to us and they just naturally share. We just invite them in. We don't have to even speak a word. They just know. But there's a counterpart to it, which has happened to me too, which is strangers. Well, I'm like waiting for a bus or a train, and there's a stranger. They come and they start pouring their life out to me. I'm like, I don't know you. I mean, like, what? And not once. I'm like, every single time. People come and share their life.
And then they say, I don't normally talk about this. I've never told anybody this, but they're telling you.
Right. And then you're like, at first, like, okay, I'm probably a great listener, but there's something else is going on. Like, what is? Like the deepest, private, sorrowful stuff. They're like, family problem going on. They were just hear about it, man. Just hear. I'm like, okay, I have a bus to catch. I'm sorry, but Thank you so much, Leonie and Adrienne, for sharing. Now we're going to move to the next segment, and I would like to give the mic to Tam and request her to talk about maybe some of the things that our practitioners are experiencing now that they did not used to experience before when they did not used to have their boundaries, and how their current version is different from the last version. So, Tam, let's explore that.
Thanks, Debjit. And this conversation is awesome. I mean, again, I don't think I've met a practitioner that hasn't burnt out, and I don't think I've met a practitioner that hasn't said, everyone just comes and dumps on me, like trauma dumps. Like like Debjit, you said, I'm not a dustbin. Like, why are you putting your trash here? And I'm gonna go back to the analogy that if we lived 10,000 years ago and we lived in our villages, we would be the medicine person, we would be the shaman, and the villagers would naturally come to our door and be like, hey, I've got some stuff going on, can I come and talk to you about it? But because you've got that modern society that we now live in, we have that disconnect. We don't have the village. They can't arrive at our hut door and be like, hi. Well, Adrienne, they used to arrive at your door. Now you're like, no, stop that. But we don't have those kinds of structures in our society where there is this person that's spiritually trained for this. This is the point of your existence in this life, is for people to come to you and say, this is what I'm struggling with. Can you assist me in moving through it? So we're, it's like moths to the light. We're the light, and everyone's arriving with like little moths to the flame, be like, help me. And you're like, no, go away. I don't have capacity for you. Like, what do you want from me? I don't know you. Like Debjit, I've got a train to catch, man. I'm just trying to do life. But I think that's where that that dumping thing comes from, is that in a normal traditional setting, that's how it would have worked. And I think society still has all those traditional things going on, but the structures don't support that. So instead, we just have complete strangers, telling us their deepest, darkest secrets, and crying. And we're like, okay, I'm gonna hold some space for you. I don't know you, but all right, let's do this. We're here, And I think that's where that comes from. But let's chat about the a lot. We're pretty seasoned practitioners here. We've been at this for a number of years. What are the big differences in when you first started out to where you're at right now? Like what does your capacity look like? What do the boundaries look like? What does your burnouts look like? What are the big differences? Leonie, I'll let you start with this conversation.
I think, the big difference for me now is having that professionalism in place, is that I am a worker within the spiritual wellness world, but I'm also a responsible human being in the current society that we live in. So creating those professional structures for myself where I'm actually showing the world that I take what I do very seriously. So the same as going to a medical doctor or going to a psychologist, I try and treat my practice in the same way, and my school in the same way, is that, you're engaging me for a service. And yes, there's the spiritual element, which sometimes that calls for me to move outside of the professional structure in whatever way is required, but I will discern that. But that has helped me, is keeping that professional structure, because at the end of the day, I'm offering a service. And I from my sort of witchery days, I think of the medicine person, there was always an exchange of some kind. It had to be an equal exchange of some kind. So, and I use that practice today as well, depending on who it is that arrives at my door. It doesn't necessarily have to be silver that crosses my palm, as long as there's some meaningful energy exchange of some sort. Then I think it balances the process in terms of burnout. And that's something I've had to hold myself to, because it's not my responsibility to heal the world. The world needs to heal itself. I'm here to help anybody who chooses to actively engage in that. And even then, like I always say, I'm just a facilitator for processes. I don't necessarily do anything. They do the work. So the big difference is I keep hours now. I try my best to, keep business hours. The clients that I'm attracting are different, and I think that's because I've done so much work. It's almost like they don't expect unreasonable things. And if I do have a client who's sort of pushing the boundary when it comes to the time of the session or the frequency of contact, I'm quite quick to have that discussion now. Where I say, look, you're asking for a consultation, but you haven't actually booked, or you haven't actually paid, or, so I have to cut the conversation here at this point. This is as much free assistance as I can give you at this point. If you need more, you'll have to come in, that sort of thing, just to keep everything balanced. I think I've really leaned into the work that feels the most fulfilling for me, and therefore it comes the most easily for me, rather than fighting things that didn't connect with me so much, and focusing on that, because it comes easier for me, and then just really taking myself and what I'm doing seriously has helped me as well. So by respecting myself and honoring myself, it seems as though it's sent out a ripple to the world that's the kind of people come to me also respect and honor what I do. So it's been a wonderful exchange. But yeah, that exchange is important. There must be fair exchange, otherwise the cup drains.
I think that's and that's an entirely huge topic that we should definitely have on one of the healer roundtables, is the energetic exchange, and how do we price ourselves, and is it okay to charge? Because we feel that obligation, and because a lot of society says, oh, but you're a spiritual healer, how can you be a healer but you don't want to help me, you don't want to work with me because I can't afford you. And it's like, well, I'm still a human, like you. So it's okay to have an energetic exchange. You're supposed to have that energetic exchange, and such a valid point of I'm here as a facilitator of processes. I'm not here to do the work for you. You're coming to me so I can hold the space so you can do the work. And I think for a lot of the boundaryless clients that we've had in the past, especially in the early days, it was like a free for all. It's like, okay, well, I'm coming to you and you're gonna just, sort all my life's problems out for me. You're gonna wave your magic wand, or, whip out your quartz, or whatever it is that you use, and you're gonna fix me. And I think for the public to understand that separation of, like, I'm not fixing anything, I'm just holding the space while you fix yourself, and giving that responsibility back to our clients, probably alleviates most of the burnout, because carrying our clients' stuff and their responsibilities, sure, I think that's a big part of where burnout comes in. Adrienne, do you wanna add to the conversation here?
Yeah, I think for now, things just for me look like balance, right? And the waves of imbalance are usually much shorter and less intense, because again, I'm aware of things much earlier than I used to be, right? And so I can kind of feel as soon as the imbalance starts to happen. Or a big practice over the last year or two for me has been slowing down to just feel what my energy feels like pressed up against somebody else's, right? And I feel like there's people who, it could be strangers, could be clients, come and talk to me, and even though they're super emotional, they're experiencing these heavy things, our energy is still smooth and it's still like this, right? But then I can feel when somebody comes up and it is immediate suction of like this desperation of, we've far surpassed expecting me to hold space. Now you're trying to like suction some light or energy or ease or whatever that person is seeking, right? Like I can feel that suction, just like when I'm with a client whose body's more guarded and I step up to them and I can actually feel there's like just gently pushing me back, right? And so it's just this somatic awareness of like, okay, well, how are we dancing together, right? And the suction thing became such a a powerful thing to me that there's been some times out to a stranger where I have done something that may have been perceived as rude, right? Because I can feel that suction, and I'm sorry for anything you're experiencing, but I have to end this conversation and move seats or go somewhere else, or end a conversation, whatever the politest, most mindful way I can think to, because that feeling of suction has just become an absolute no for me. Yeah, so I think that's what that boundary and awareness of burnout has. I've become very aware of as soon as things start to get a little bit wobbly.
Yeah, I think paying attention to that balance, and it takes time. If a practitioner is watching this and they're, maybe a couple of months in on being a practitioner and just starting the work, maybe they've just popped out of their dark night of the soul. You're not going to get the stuff right in the beginning. I mean, I would have 20 years ago loved to have known that these conversations existed and that these things existed. I would have probably forgone a couple of my burnouts, but because we don't get to talk about this stuff, or we feel like we can't talk about it, because of the appearances, and we're the teachers and the leaders and the guides, that we kind of shove the stuff down, and that just keeps perpetuating and keeps adding to that burnout. So it's okay to say no. It's okay to pick our clients. It's okay to honor that balance and be like, hey, I don't actually have capacity to see the clients that I have scheduled for today, and I'm going to honor that. And it's okay if the clients fall away, because Buddhist philosophy of impermanence, everything is temporary in life. So if you're working with the client today and not tomorrow, that's okay, because it makes space for the next person that you're going to be working with. What would you say to someone who's currently in burnout, and they know that they're in burnout, but they're stuck in burnout? What's some advice that you could share with a fellow practitioner? Adrienne, I'll let you carry on with the conversation.
For me, I would just say, and the only way I know how to say it is just go up for little sips of air, right? Instead of like your first goal is to just be happy, balanced. No, like like when you think of a wave smoothing out, it just doesn't wave and then goes flat, right? It has like some in between. And so that's what I tell myself and what I would share with other people. Just get a sip of air, and then your body remembers, oh yeah, that air feels good, right? It feels good to have breath in my lungs again. And not be on the underside of the water and all the whirlpool, right? And so like, okay, well, how else can I give my body like a little sip of air? Just a little sip. And then all of a sudden, okay, well now, my head's above the water a little bit longer. And then the next thing I know, I'm floating on my back again. Which is my goal, is to be floating on my back in the water, moving with the waves, right? And so, yeah, those just little sips of air. What can I do in this moment, instead of it feeling like how do I fix burnout, right? How do I fix my burnout feels so big to me because burnout feels so fucking big, right? It feels like the only force of energy, in my opinion, when I'm experiencing burnout, it is the main source of what I'm thinking about,
100%.
what I'm feeling. Yeah. And so little tiny sips of air. What can I do? Can I call a friend? Can I meditate? Can I go outside? And then you're like, oh, because our bodies don't want to be in burnout, obviously. So when they start to experience more of those little, just tiny breathable moments, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the one. This is the feeling that I want.
That's some really, really solid advice, and and keep it simple. As you said, when you're right there in the throes of peak burnout, and everything feels overwhelming. Like you don't know where up is. Your analogy with the wave was perfect. Where you're just being spun through the water, and you're like, where's the sky in all of this? I'm just being fed with mouthfuls of sand. So I love that wave analogy, because it is sometimes we feel like we're drowning in peak burnout. We don't know where up is. So, come up with those small sips of air. What can you do? What do you need in this moment? Do you need to call that friend? Do you need to just sit out with nature? Do you just need to have a good cry or a cup of tea? Like, what do you need right now? Not how do I get rid of my burnout and how do I get out of burnout? Like, what do you need right now? So I love the simplicity in that, small steps. Leonie, do you have some things to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with what Adrienne is saying and what you've said as well. It's like it's a huge thing to tackle. So I think the first thing is recognizing that we've had an all fall down, or that we're about to have an all fall down. And then for me, it's always been sort of like back to basics, so like what can help me in this moment. So like you said, a cup of tea, what kind of nutrition am I doing for myself, routines, like maybe celebrating the wins in the day, like I managed to do this, I managed to do that, just celebrating yourself where you are doing things. And then I try and put myself in a space of what, instead of being in what I should do, so the to-do list, I should do all of these things, I look at it and I try and create what I feel like I can do, or what I would like to do of those things. And then I just try and do 5 minutes of something, or one thing, or and it slowly like chisel away at the list. But the main thing is, I think, just to really be present with the feelings, be present with the what seems to be missing, what would help, what would make me feel better, and but also just to be very sort of aware that I'm making healthy choices, not victim choices, when I'm asking what would make me feel better, because I don't want to worsen my situation by going into the wrong thing, or avoiding something. And then to just be very honest. I mean, to say, if you can't do it, or you're really being impacted, then you have to call in your sick day at work, or you have to see someone to help you with whatever the problem is, whether it's your healer or your herbalist or your doctor or whoever it is, your spiritual worker, your mentor, your friends, whatever. And then just take action for yourself. Say, I'm actually not in capacity, so I'm taking a hiatus, I'm taking a break, I'm sorting myself out, I'm putting routines in place. And then what I love the power of the reschedule, because it's not necessarily a cancellation that could be indefinite. It's a reschedule. So you give yourself and the client a time where we will reconvene, so it's like not necessarily a deadline for you, but it helps you and them stay in touch and stay connected. And then you reschedule and you get yourself together. And like I've said, nutrition, routine, those things are important. Make sure you're doing all your bits and bobs that you should be doing. And then if you're noticing physical symptoms, like supplement your diet, supplement your spiritual energy as well. I think for new practitioners, it's just really important to trust the process, that you can do this and that you can be okay. And most importantly, it's not to get carried away with holding the other person's pain. And I mean, you do come across exceptionally sensitive scenarios with people. We've seen people with abuse, we've seen people with death of their loved ones, we've seen people with illness, we've seen people with horrific things that they have to process. And sometimes you just ache for them. It's so difficult, but at the end of the day, it's not your thing to carry. And so you've got to just keep being the facilitator, keeping yourself in the respectful space. Stepping into their stuff is actually not honoring them. So that's also really important. When you in the burnout, just check yourself. Have you been stepping into the other things? Because sometimes that can be enough to recalibrate, is realizing actually it's not my pain I'm feeling right now, it's not my overwhelm I'm feeling right now.
And I agree with that completely. And I think it's important too to share the reminder that especially when the burnout is energetic, it can be over surprisingly quickly, right? Like, and so I think a lot of times we're like, how can I feel this much more balanced and this much better this fast? Because I went outside, or just because I did this. And that is very genuine. Like, because it's so big, it feels like, wait, there should be like more. There should be more I have to do. And no, sometimes energetically you can lift that heaviness and just, sail much more quickly than it feels like it would be humanly possible to do. So I just want to send that reminder too, like, if you come up for that little sip of air and you just feel like, oh, I'm good. I think I'm done. Then you're done, and and trust that and move on with that freedom and joy.
Love those points that have been being raised that it's I think for a lot of us when we hit burnout, it's like, oh, I failed, oh, I suck as a practitioner, or oh, I'm not honoring myself, I'm not doing the work properly, and that then just leads into imposter syndrome and all of that side of us. And I think the important thing is to remind yourself that if you hit burnout, you haven't failed. You haven't done anything incorrectly. And you can fix that. You can come back from burnout. You're not stuck there. And I think because burnout on the different levels of severity can feel so overwhelming that it's like, well, this is obviously my new state of existence. This is just where I live now. Like it's not. It's temporary. Like you can move through it, and it's doing the small things, listening and paying attention to the self, honoring the self, saying no to clients and sessions that do drain you, that do take it out of you. I think, Adrienne, you put it really perfectly in explaining that vacuum, where you sit with the person, they're just sucking the life out of you. It's okay to say no to people like that. Before we head into starting to close off today's discussion, I just want to see if Debjit has any additional questions that he wants to ask the two of you.
Thanks, Steph. Actually, I do, because one of the questions that was popping in my mind was, when a lot of us who are spiritual practitioners, teachers, healers, we start experiencing burnout, it's not always necessarily because of what is coming out from the outside, from the client side or the work side. Sometimes it's the energy changing. There is planetary alignment stuff going on, the moon phase is going on, or maybe you're just entering another spiritual, integration phase. Right. I remember Tam once mentioned during our conversations that, there was a time where she was on the crossroads of leaving her journey as a tarot card reader to become a teacher. And it was a very confusing time for her, and she was just down. And I can imagine a lot of people who are at that crossroad would experience what would seem like a burnout, because there's a lot of inner work needs to be done. As spiritual practitioners, we are constantly balancing the outer work with our own inner. We need to also meditate. We need to do our healing work. We need to do our own shadow work. Our personal stuff is happening while we are trying to heal the world. So how do you guys, Adrienne, Leonie, and I would like to ask Tam also about this, how do you guys, deal with this, understanding when you need to do your own spiritual work, and how do you balance with it? And when it comes as a burnout, how do you know that this is exactly what my body and my energies are asking for? I'd like to ask Tam first for this question, because I know she has a lot to share.
Thanks, Debjit. And yeah, so when I retired from reading tarot, and a lot of my decision to retire from reading tarot was because I was burnt out as a reader. I mean, I had people that would consistently ask me the same questions over and over. I would have clients that would just leave me feeling depleted. And back then, as a reader, I didn't have the boundaries. I didn't know the boundaries was okay to have. I'm here to serve everyone. And I remember the very first time I ever put a boundary down with a client in a reading, they came to me and they were asking me about someone else. And I kind of started setting more ethical boundaries where it's, I'm here to read you, not the person that you're asking about. And I said, well, unfortunately, I can't look at that for you. And they got very upset with me. And I said, that's not a problem. Here's your money. Like, let's not take up one another's time anymore. And it was honestly the first time in my professional career that I'd ever handed money back to a client. And I was like, okay, I actually can't help you. I wanted to be sick. Like I felt horrible in that moment. I was like, oh, I'm a horrible person. This person hates me. But like I really ran through the motions of it, and I thought about it, and I was like, no, you did the right thing there.
Yes.
You would have climbed into reading someone else who's not present. That's unethical. And it's okay to have those boundaries. It's okay to give your money back to your clients and be like, well, today I can't actually help you. But when I hit that point of making the decision to retire, I was exhausted. I was exhausted of being the go-to, the person who has all the answers, the professional, I think people have actually said to me, I've had friends say to me, you're the psychic, you give me the answers. And I look back now and I'm like, man, that was disrespectful as hell. Like, sis, that's a horrible thing to say to someone, like that's very disrespectful. Just because I've got these gifts doesn't mean that I'm a tap that you can just turn on at any stage. And for me, I needed time to step away from my craft as a reader to really understand those things, that it is okay to say no to clients. It is okay to give them their money back and say, hey, I'm not the right reader for you. And for the friends and the family, when they're like, you're the psychic, you give me the answers, I can be like, well, actually, you've got the answers sitting inside of you. And really all I've been doing all along is just facilitating the process for you to find those answers. But because I was so like in my work, like I was swimming all the way in it, I couldn't bring myself up for air to really look at the whole picture. So I had to take that step away to really see like what is going on here, what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And I realized that there was so many instances where I was actually doing a disservice to clients by not having those boundaries in place, by reading for absolutely anyone who walked through my door, no matter what it is that they wanted to ask. I would be like, cool, let's pull the cards and let's have a look. So stepping away, it's okay to step away. I think we need to step away from our work because we have to recalibrate ourselves. And bringing in the question of doing your own work, that's continuous. I mean, your work is on a day-to-day basis. We're continuously doing our work. I check in with myself regularly. Where are you at? What's going on? What's happening in the different bodies? What does your capacity look like? How are your boundaries looking? Because if I don't do those check-ins with myself, I've got the saying that was taught to me, check yourself before you wreck yourself or someone else. So we have to check in with ourselves as practitioners. And if checking in with yourself takes a day, 3 months, 3 years, 5 years, it's okay. Like, you're not failing. You don't have to be on call. You're not a tap. Like, people can't arrive and be like, okay, give me the answers. You're not an AI system. We're not robots. And it's okay to honor those things. It really is. So yes, step away from your work when you need to. Go and do your own work because you need to, because it does. It allows you to hold safer space. It allows you to have more capacity to hold space. You can work with a lot more different types of people. You have more capacity for different types of people. If someone came to me 20 years ago and completely just trauma dumped all over me, I would be like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And, I'd fit into all these enabling roles, of like things that I think that I should be saying, whereas now I would handle those completely differently because I've taken the time and the years to, check my codependency, to check my own traumas, my own issues, all the things, the family that I grew up in, a brother with addiction. I've had to work on all those things. So I know that I'm not leaking out into my client sessions because that's just messy. And then you're carrying your stuff and your client stuff, and you're gonna burn out because of that. So thank you for bringing me into the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I really wanted to hear from your end. You have experienced this firsthand, and I knew that. Thanks, Tam. Adrienne, would you like to share a bit about on this topic? Like, how does burnout creep up on you when it is like your inner guidance saying it's time to do your own inner work? Has it happened with you? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think now that I'm a little bit more experienced, I think the burnout happens when I ignore the whispers that it's time to do my own work, right? And I think there's a very fine line in facilitating healing because, first of all, nobody's really completely healed, right?
Mhm.
Like this is an ongoing thing. So if we wait until we're healed to help people, then we'll be waiting forever. And also, if we're in need of active healing and attention, it is unethical for us to be placing hands, intentions, tuning forks. If we are actively hyper focused on our own situation,
Mhm.
our work is not conveying like it should, right? And so I feel like remembering that this is a natural ebb and flow, right? This is a natural, like, okay, I have space for everybody else. Nope, no more space for everybody else. Oh, okay, I have some space for everybody else. Okay, nope, just me, and like remembering it as this slow, easy breath of life
Mm.
that we're all going to experience. No facilitator of healing can go 100 miles an hour for
Right.
long. They
That
might
is
do it, but it won't be for long. And so knowing to expect as a new facilitator of healing to expect, oh, there might be some time. And for some people, like, for some women with hormonal cycles, it may go with cycles that certain times of the month I may
yeah.
not be in the space. Or if I notice, oh, if I'm in my follicular phase, every, marketing feels really tough, right? Or when I'm
Mm.
on my cycle, energy work with clients doesn't align, like there's
Mm.
so many different things that come into that natural, like expansion, contraction journey.
So true. So true. I really like the example you shared, like, the waves and the rhythm. Like, it's like breathing, isn't it? Like, if the nature is like that, if you breathe in, breathe out, if the waves are like that, then we are also supposed to be operating just like that. Go in, come back, come out, come back, right? Thank you so much, Adrienne. Leonie, would you like to share a little bit on this topic?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said. I think for me, the self-work, I certainly, since I discovered, that sort of stuff, I've continuously been in it. And sometimes I go through stagnant periods where there's not that much aha happening, but I'm still doing
Mm.
my processes and I'm still doing my check-ins and I'm still doing my spiritual realignments and my therapy and things because it just keeps me in the practice of it. And I go through periods where it's really intense for me personally. Then I have to just be very aware of myself in the space of the work that I'm doing. And that can sometimes feel like slightly challenging because I've got a lot on my personal plate. And then other times it's really empowering in the background that I'm having some breakthroughs or I've moved through something or I've shifted into a different energy, and that then ripples into the work that I do in a positive kind of way. So I do think it's an ebb and flow, as Adrienne said. But for me, the work is constant. We never fully heal. There'll
Mm.
always be something else or something deeper or another level. So we have to just be very conscious of that, especially if we want to work with other people. But I think being experienced, knowing your craft, whatever it might be, if you ever feel slightly uncomfortable or slightly out of sync, just fall back
Mm.
onto your theory, fall back onto what you know, fall back onto what you trust, back to basics every time. You can't go wrong if you just trust what you know to be true and what you've studied and what you've learned and how you've developed your experience. And then when you're feeling more confident, you'll go back into branching out and to expanding and to all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, burnout, you've got to find what the red flags are for you. What is the warning whistle for you? What
Yes.
is your benchmark? What is your, where is the tide line supposed to be before you get washed away? As Adrienne was saying, it's a challenging thing though. But I think
Yeah.
doing our own work is one of the best preventions towards burnout, is because we're very aware of where we are in what we are doing. Then that can be really helpful.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
I,
much,
I think
Leonie. I
that's a
think like
great
that was
point.
very
And oh, sorry, I was going to say,
yes, yes.
remembering to do those things like when you're feeling great and balanced,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Because I think a lot of us, as we're like feeling good, we forget the things that helped us to feel good. right? And then a lot of people are using them as proactive things, right? We're using meditation proactively, or massages, or energy work from different practitioners. We're using those when we're already pretty deep into the burnout, instead of using them when we're feeling great and balanced to extend that time of balance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Leonie and Adrienne. We are almost at the end of our discussion. I would like Tam to close the discussion. So, Tam.
I think we just hit on so many great points, and like we said right at the beginning, it's a conversation that we do need to be having as practitioners. We need to talk about the shitty side of the work that we do, and burnout is one of the crappy parts of the work that we do. We're going to burn ourselves out because we're human. We only have so much capacity. We only have so much to give. And also learning, I think the biggest thing is that you're not failing because you've burnt out. It's just having better boundaries, I think, is one of the biggest things that will help you negate a lot of the burnout. It's okay to say no. It's okay if you wake up and you're like, "Phew, okay, I have zero capacity for anything today," to message your clients and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry." You're not being unprofessional. You're being of better service to your client. If you arrived in that session half energized, you're going to give them half of yourself. Schedule it for the next day when you do have that full capacity. So you're not failing because you've burnt out. You don't stink as a practitioner because you've burnt out. Like we all go through it. And also I think that's something we all need to hear, is that it's normal. Burnout is very normal in our industry, and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's okay to sit with it and have systems and processes in place that can help you through those burnouts. I think we've just hit on so many awesome points that I think a lot of the practitioners are really going to resonate with. Before we do close off, Leonie and Adrienne, is there any last bit of advice that you want to share with your fellow practitioners before we close the session off?
I think I would just say that it's part of the process. And when you're involved with energy work or spiritual work, there are murky times, right? And not to be put off by the murky times. And that even if you are experiencing something really heavy and really difficult, I would invite you to really compost through that difficult time as much as you can, because actually it will teach you so much. And as much as it's important to step away when you've overdone it for yourself, it's also important to lean in when you know that you can grow through something. So to find that balance, but just to not give up on what initially brought you to this space, because I think you can get disillusioned with how challenging it can be, or how much it can be, or how difficult it is. Don't lose your initial spark, or don't let the animosity of your gift take it from you. You don't have to sell your gift to the world. You don't have to be of service if it's not for you. You can step away completely and still enjoy your spiritual work and your spiritual gifts through for yourself. That's also something to give yourself permission to do. But in the same breath, I'd say don't let it chase you away completely. Find a way that works for you, so that you can still express your natural self in a way that gives you joy. So maybe that way didn't work. That's fine. We'll burn that up and forget about it. We'll start again, try something different with more boundaries or a different structure. And just remember that you are important too. At the end of the day, this is your life and you exist, and you are number one. You have to look after you before you look after anybody else.
Absolutely. That's some very solid advice to close off with. Adrienne, do you have any last little bits to add?
Yeah, I think just a friendly reminder to just slow down, be a little bit gentle. Like burnout to me comes with this, and I think Tam, you touched on it. It can just come with a massive blanket of guilt, right? And like the truth is, we were such a great facilitator of healing. We just spun our wheels a little bit, and we have to like bring it back. And so I think that that reminder again, like you said, you did nothing wrong. This, we can't like love and light ourselves out of burnout. If we could, none of us would experience that. Yeah, so just that friendly reminder.
I love that. You can't love and light yourself out of burnout. Yeah,
Yeah, and like remembering or really slowing down to figure out those initial, like Leonie said, the initial signs for your body, and thinking about it, like probably my initial sign is probably like this feeling that, oh, what can I do for the world as little old me? Right. I think that's where my first seed of feeling like I'm not doing enough, right? Like even with these clients, I'm not making enough of a wave. I'm not doing. So I think like slowing down to see you personally, what is your very first sign? When do your handlebars start to wobble?
I love that. When your handlebars start to wobble, so that's a good indication. Because we feel a little out of sorts, like our energy doesn't feel right, like we feel off. And there's a reason that we feel off. And that's it. And I think Leonie said it really well. Know what your red flags are for when you are starting to approach burnout, when you are doing too much. And that's we're human, I think is the most important thing to remember here is that we're human. We only have so much capacity. We only can do so many things, and to not put so much pressure on ourselves to be this love and light perfect healer. I have my life all together. I've done all my work. I do my work continuously. I'm going to have days where I feel amazing and days where I'm like, I don't want to do the will today. Like it's okay to embrace the human aspect of being a practitioner. We don't have to stick ourselves up on the pedestal and be the great guru. We can't do that for everyone. I think that reminder is probably one of the most important places to remember for us. I think the conversation has been hugely insightful. I think you've both, in fact, all of us, we've shared such amazing vulnerability. Like we've been raw and honest with practitioners out there. Like, hey, the path sucks sometimes. We're going to have days where we really struggle, and we're going to have days where the work is beautiful. And honoring the ebbs and flows, as Adrienne's put it so beautifully, honor your ebbs and flows as a practitioner. You're not a tap. Like don't let the world make you think like you constantly have to turn yourself on and off. You decide when you turn your tap on and off. You decide when you want to water your garden. So I think that's a really great place to leave today's session. To both of you, thank you hugely for coming in and being so real about your personal experiences, what burnout looks like for you, and for having this conversation. Before we do close, how can people if anyone's watching this and they possibly want to reach out to you or connect with you, how can they do that? Adrienne, I'll let you go first.
So I have a group on Facebook, Not Your Mama's Mindfulness Community 2.0. Would love to have anybody there. It's a really fun, safe space. And then my website as well is lifeinthemomentsc.com.
And then Leonie, how can people reach out and connect with you?
Sure. So you can send me an email. It's leomaritz@gmail.com. And I've also got a Facebook page, which is Zodiac Tarot-Leonie Maritz. And that's how you can get hold of me.
Perfect. I will be sharing all the contact details in the video description as well. To the both of you, thank you hugely for coming in to have this very needed conversation with us. I must say I'm looking forward to seeing more of the Healer Roundtable discussions coming up. We've got some really great topics planned for the rest of the year. But for this month, that is the conversation. Honor yourself, roll with the burnouts, come up for the air when you need to, say no when you need to, and reach out to the community. Reach out to your community and be like, hey, I think I'm drowning today. Who out there can help me? Because reaching out for help doesn't make you a failure. Someone out there can probably help you through it a bit quicker. So it's okay to ask for help. So we will be catching you next month. Next month, we're going to be chatting about grief as a pathway for healers. Very, very interesting topic coming up for next month, so be sure to check that out. Until then, we'll leave it there. Debjit, thank you for hosting with me. And to the two of you, thank you so much for being here. We'll see all of you next month.